Welcome back to another episode of Novelio. Today is Saturday, June 5th, 2021. I'm going to continue on with my reading of It Happened on Dufferin Terrace. After they parted company, Serenity ordered room service for her supper. Bedtime came and she embraced it. Her sleep was restless and she could not shut her mind down. Adrenaline coursed through her body from the excitement over her ideas. The night was spent tossing and turning and watching the glowing red digital numbers change on the bedside alarm clock. After her sleepless night, any hassles from Jonathan Drake were not invited. Although she expected something to happen today, nothing did. She spoke with Maureen. Bless her. All she wanted was an improved changing room where she could fit women for their bras. Nothing else? No, that's all. The woman nudged her black-rimmed cat eyeglasses up her nose. There isn't room to swing a cat in any of the stalls, not to mention we need real doors, not just flimsy curtains. Serenity noted the woman's concerns in her leather-bound notebook. Can you show me what you have now? Maureen guided the way to the back corner of her division. Drapes, or what passed as them, separated the fitting rooms from the open floor area. The section bordered on being as nasty as it in the basement. So, in place of 8 cubicles, cut back to a maximum of 6. Take some space from your department and put up a wall with a doorway leading into it. Install secure doors with locks. Could you arrange that? You would make an old woman extremely happy. She fussed over a selection of bras on plastic hangers, causing them to chatter against one another. Thanks, Maureen. Your concerns are in my proposition. Expanding the dressing rooms and making the individual stalls private was an easy fix compared to some of the others. Serenity returned to her office and added the woman's desires to her burgeoning spreadsheet of requests. Frank blew in after lunch. He connected her to the in-house computer system and provided her with a password. I'll also need access to the accounting software. He obliged and soon had her hooked up. APAR, employee database, just names, addresses, and phone numbers. Payroll is outsourced. No internet access. Is there such a thing as a boardroom in this place? He chuckled. Nah, years ago. You're in it. His comment stunned her. This tiny office was a conference room at one time? What was the phrase Maureen used to describe her changing rooms? Ditto for here. How the business function amazed her. No contact with the outside world except via their cell phones and on their breaks. Mind you, that did keep productivity up. With the passwords written in her moleskin, she closed the book and put it in her handbag. If there's nothing else, said Frank, I'll head back to the dungeon. Can you and Derek come up for a chat, say 2 o'clock or so? Unless the whole system crashes. Great, I'll see you then. Serenity stood and walked out with them. She stopped at the reception's desk. They tell me you no longer have a boardroom. What about a whiteboard and markers, or at the very least an easel and writing pad? I'll look. When do you need them? An hour from now? The expression on the girl's face said she found her demanding, and few unsavory words accompanied her thoughts. She returned to her office. Should Giselle source the requested objects, she would bring them to her. The men crossed the threshold at the receptionist brought in an aluminum stand with a jumbo pad of thick paper and some colored markers. Not ideal, but they would work. Serenity outlined a circle in the middle of the sheet. This is here. The hub. A series of lines spread out from the center in smaller round shapes at the ends of them. These are the rest of the stores. Connect them to us. By the time they stopped, markings in red, blue, green, black covered the page. Some were solid, others dotted. The newsprint looked a mess, but they knew what each line and tint meant. Okay, you're the IT experts. Take this and figure out what's required to bring it together. Enthusiasm gushed from them. After the two left, Serenity collapsed into her chair. Their brainstorming get-together went better than she expected. Give a computer geek a next to impossible project, and they'll prove you wrong every time. Out of habit, Serenity opened the browser on her MacBook, only to receive an error message. No connectivity was an immense pain in addition to inconvenience. She reached for her smartphone. The web was accessible on the tiny screen. She scrolled through the settings and discovered a mobile hotspot and connected her device to her phone's 4G. She was hooked into the world beyond the confines of the business without waiting to return to the hotel. Signal weak, it was slow and dropped out. Derek said the stone in her office was in the middle of the uppermost floor with no windows. What about the Interact machines? They all worked. Telephone lines, they didn't depend on the internet, but Ma Bell instead, or whatever company Jonathan's used. When Serenity checked in, 2 boardrooms were off to the side, a smaller one and a larger one. The place had Wi-Fi. If no one booked either room, her imagination started to run riot. She packed up her things and went to the hotel. In luck, the smaller room was available and she was welcome to use its facilities. It was comfortable and a nearby system failure required attention. The majority of her plans necessitated technical help, so she didn't see a problem with whisking the IT people across the street. Still, she needed Jonathan Drake's blessings. After she gave him a dressing down, he might not be so amenable to her dragging his staff off-site. She returned to the big man's office. For the next couple of days, Frank and Derek will be joining me in the conference room at my hotel. With your antique computer system and absence of internet, it's impossible to hold a meaningful meeting. Before you panic, we're only over the road, and if anything happens, they can be reached by phone. Serenity backed away from his desk and turned. So that's a yes? Next, she descended to the bowels of hell and informed the guys. Bring that fabulous scribble on paper with you, too. We've got lots to work on. But, cleared with the man upstairs. Now you're off, phone call away. Further, if you crack your head on something or trip up the steps, some fresh air and sunshine won't go amiss. Who knows, you might even get rid of your prison pallor. The remainder of this week and all the next, Serenity worked closely with the 2 men on the blueprints for a countrywide grid. She ensured they both had her email address so they could remain in contact before she left for the airport for her flight to Vancouver. Chapter 8. Plains of Abraham, Quebec-City. Roger Scott sauntered across the grass with Tori, his black lab. Index fingers slipped through the ring of the choke chain. He unclipped the tether and nodded to his son. Adam threw the tennis ball with as much strength as a 10-year-old boy could muster. Once the sphere was airborne, he released the dog and she bounded off in pursuit. Lead gathered, he eased himself to the ground under the shade of a gigantic maple where he could keep an eye on his boy and the retriever. He drew up his knees and rested his arms on them. The dog's rope dangled in front of his legs. A riding lawnmower droned near Edwin Belanger bandstand. Another city laborer sauntered by him carrying an idling gas-powered string trimmer. The sun beating down on the reflective stripes on his bright orange safety vest blinded him, and he shielded his eyes with his hand. The worker squeezed the throttle and the machine roared to life. Grass clippings flew into the air. So much for a quiet day on the plains of Abraham. While he relaxed and supervised the sport of fetch, which Tori loved more than anything else, his Samsung S7 vibrated in the holster clipped to his belt. Fumbling with his free hand, Roger plucked out the device to find out who had contacted him. It was an email in reply to an advert he placed on Match.com. Only one minor problem. He had never put an ad on any dating site. Suddenly he missed his wife more than usual. He still wore his wedding ring, never taking off the platinum band since her death 3 years ago. In the beginning, he mourned her loss. Then this grief turned to anger. In his mind, she took the coward's way out when she swallowed the bottle of sleeping pills one day when he was at work and Adam at school. He kicked himself for not seeing the signs while there was still time to act. Get Bridget the help she sorely needed. His young sons discovered his mother and called him panicked because he couldn't awaken her. Why couldn't he have found her? Another thing he beat himself up over. A small boy should not have had to endure such a thing. His phone vibrated a second time. Was one of his workmates pulling a practical joke by putting his profile online? Again, response to another ad, but this time on a different website. The note mentioned the photograph of him with his adorable son and gorgeous dog. None of his colleagues had access to any pictures like that. Only the one taken for his ID badge. Watch this, Dad, Adam called, tossing the ball straight up in the sky. Tori watched, and when it started to descend, leapt into the air and clamped her mouth around the orb. An idea came to him. What if his son did it? He wouldn't. Would he? That would explain the picture. The longer he sat and stewed over it, the angrier he got. "Come on, you two. Time we headed back home." "But, Dad, we just got here." Getting to his feet, Roger went on. "I said time to go home. No arguments. We're going home. End of—" He clipped the leash to Tori's collar, and they returned to their house. On their walk from the Plains of Abraham to their home on Rue de Rempart, overlooking the rooftops of the town below, his smartphone never stopped vibrating. Chapter 9. Roger's home, Rue de Rempart, Quebec-City. When Roger opened the front door, Adam lunged inside and darted up the stairs to his room. If that didn't say guilty, he didn't know what did. Tori's restraints removed, he hung them on their hook mounted on the wall. The dog trotted to her bed beneath the window, walked in circles one way and then reversed before lying down with a thud. Roger started for the staircase but hesitated at the bottom. Serious thought was needed on how to approach the subject. Adam was 7 when his mother passed away, old enough to remember her and still miss her. That might be the way to go. Find out if his son had played matchmaker on the 2 dating sites. Who knew how many others had his personal information plastered all over them? His Samsung buzzed so many times there was barely a pause between rings. He took the device out of the holster and left the cell phone on the table in the foyer. Interruptions during what would be a serious conversation with his son weren't needed. "Hey, buddy, mind if I come in?" he said, turning the knob. Adam hunkered cross-legged on the mattress, elbows on his knees, and his chin in his hands. The boy looked up and nodded, his eyes red and puffy, like he had been crying. Roger sauntered over to the bed, sat beside him and sighed. "I know you miss your mom. I miss her too. But I hear you talk about her. You're angry. You swear and say mean things about her. I wish she got help. Maybe if she had, she would still be alive. I'm mad, furious at her actions. She acted selfishly, never gave any consideration to ours, her parents, and her siblings' feelings. We never see Nana and Pop anymore. They used to come around lots right after Mom died. Then they stopped. Why? I can't answer that, son. Possible they thought they were too much of a reminder to us." Adam tipped his head on Roger. In seconds he had his arm around the child. "What would you think if I started seeing other women?" It was out there. The elephant was shrinking from an enormous pachyderm into a small, more manageable sized invisible third party. The boy raised his head. "Dating?" "Sure. Doesn't mean I don't love your mom or think about her." He hugged Adam, so he drew out the word before continuing. "Is that why you started a profile for me on the 2 dating sites?" "More than 2, he mumbled, hanging his head. "How many then?" "Many as I could." He faced his father. Roger's stomach lurched. Match and eHarmony were well known. There were more, but he could remove himself. He earned a living as a data security specialist, removing himself from them. A cakewalk. The situation was more of an embarrassment than anything. The boy's heart was in the right place. He meant well. With social media, he was a Luddite. His job tied him to a computer all day. Spending his evenings in cyberspace was a waste. Quality time with his son was what counted. Some nights they played snakes and ladders, others they participated in sports until bedtime. Nighttime sporting events were postponed until the weekend when they didn't have to get up the next morning for school or work. "Can I ask you a question?" Adam nodded. "Why did you do it?" "Because you're always sad. I thought if you found someone, you'd be happy again." A 10-year-old's wisdom. He ruffled his son's hair as he stood. "So what do you want for supper?" Still early, but thinking about their dinner was best done sooner than later if he had to go to the supermarket. "Can we order pizza?" They both needed to eat. "Okay, the usual?" "Yes, please." Chapter 10. St. John, New Brunswick. Serenity inserted her key card to unlock the door to her room. 5 months was a long time to live out of a suitcase. At least Thacker, Price, and Associates didn't skimp out on her accommodations. They booked her into deluxe king rooms in every city at one of their better hostelries. Still, not anything like being at home with her things. The light on the phone blinked red, indicating someone had called and left a message. Whoever it was could wait. She held the rolling case over to the hide-a-bed, pulled the purse's strap from her shoulder, and let it fall on the cushion. Next she took off her coat, tossed the wool garment on the Chesterfield with her bag, and kicked off her heels. Much as she willed herself to ignore the flashing lights, she walked to the desk and adhered to the sequence to retrieve the communique. The recorded voice said, "Martin here. You've not reported in a few days. Wanted to ensure everything was all right and you're okay." Not having called in or emailed since the day she arrived in St. John's, she understood Boss's apprehension. At least she only had one more location to audit, Montreal. After that, prepare her proposal for the week of meetings in Quebec-City, where she started the assignment 6 months before. Back then, she had no problems since most of the people she dealt with were fluent in both official Canadian languages. Still, boning up the dialect was a good idea. Here in New Brunswick, many people spoke English as their second language. She retrieved her iPhone and tapped a short text to her supervisor, ensuring him all was well, hoping to put his mind at rest. Until now, she communicated once a day and sometimes more often if she required something she couldn't obtain any other way. The outlet in this city needed an update of its equipment and fixtures. Thankfully, the sales associates could work with the antique tills and make exchange without the benefit of a computer, telling them how much to give back to the customer. In some locations, the elimination of the penny caused problems, the deficiency in math skills a contributing factor. With its arched windows and corner doors, the place had charm. The hardwood floors creaked with each footstep. There was no place for modern electronic tills. The workers were cheerful, hardworking, and kept the store immaculate. Not a thing was out of place. Displays were neat, well arranged, and after a customer created a mess, someone hustled over to make it tidy again. Serenity was quite happy to leave things as is for this location. One of the things she admired in this branch of Jonathan's was an area dedicated to local craftspeople. Homemade candles, bath products, and other items were on sale. The space was reminiscent of the St. Lawrence Market back home in downtown Toronto. Many an enjoyable day was absorbed wandering through to see what was available, admire the workmanship the artisans put into their crafts. Although hungry more than food, she wanted a hot soak. She picked up her oversized handbag and rummaged inside to find the small bag containing the citrus bombs she bought earlier. Eager to try them and possibly acquire more before leaving if she liked them, she went into the bathroom. Once Serenity adjusted the water to the correct temperature and put in the plug, she dropped one of the cylinders into the tub. It fizzed and foamed. Hair clipped up and undressed, she climbed in and sank into its soothing comfort. One more full day in the city. She needed to make the most of every hour. After soaking, she perused the room service menu. In the morning, Serenity trundled her laptop case through the door of the New Brunswick store and walked to the elevator near the back. As she entered the car, a voice called out, asking her to hold it. A woman, about her age, hurried to the lift, carrying an armload of file folders. "Cheers," she said, panting from the exertion. "Are you new here? Not seen you before." "Not new. I'm doing an appraisal for the head of Jonathan's. He hired the firm I work for to do a consult on the operations of all the outlets." The other woman's face paled. "Nothing to worry about. This store is getting a favorable rating. I love the old-fashioned feel to this place. Would be a shame to alter things. Sometimes running a successful business is more than stainless steel, plate glass, and computerized tills." Did she just say that? She who wholly believed in progress and automation? "By the way, I'm Serenity." "I'm Melissa Scott." She shook her Serenity's hand. A firm handshake, businesslike, not damp with nervous sweat. This lady carried herself well. At the same instant, a thought came to her. They could modernize the store and still maintain the existing appearance. Wi-Fi would connect all the computers and hide the devices under counters along with the barcode readers. Leave the old cash registers out in plain sight. The dark-stained tiger oak and glass exhibition cases were all in decent repair. The vertical conveyor reached the floor housing Serenity's temporary office. She disembarked, smiling. This place could be the best of old and new. Excited, she couldn't wait for her laptop to finish its boot sequence so she could add this to her notes. This branch of the chain already had computers. They were tucked away up in the offices, computerized still, or an old manual one. You had to balance your receipts at the end of the day and put the cash in the safe. With her MacBook Air up and running, Serenity opened her file for this shop and typed her brilliant idea. Whether her employer or the client agreed remained unknown. She proceeded brilliant with her current focus. Depending on the cost, it might be financially viable to invest in square registers and iPads. Those didn't function with debit cards. Previous versions of electronic card machines were currently used in the store. Newer devices that worked with chip and pin and contactless payment in addition to swipe installed. Later, Melissa turned up in her doorway. I wonder if you fancied a bit of lunch, or at least a coffee. The place across the street does good food. The clock indicated the entire morning had elapsed. Some days her job seemed to drag. Those were consumed poring over financial statements. This morning was different. Her creativeness took over. An economic analysis needed to be done before implementing her designs. She had copies of the store's P&Ls for the last 5 years, along with balance sheets, receivables, aging, and their turnaround time for making payments. Cost out the new equipment, which would be capital expense, so taxed differently. Sure, love to. Coat on and crossbody bag over her shoulder, she set out. A blizzard had blown in off the Bay of Fundy. The small pellets prickled and stung Serenity's face like thousands of sharp needles. Maybe life in Toronto was all right. Not as much snow. Better transit system. Most days she could go to and from work without ever walking more than 500 feet at street level. The rest of her commute was underground in climate-controlled comfort. The girls advanced into the warmth of the pub. In one of the rooms, a wood fire crackled in a gigantic fireplace. "Let's sit in here," Melissa suggested, and asked the hostess if they could be seated in there. Despite not being outdoors for long, the frigid, damp air chilled Serenity to the bone. The heat emanating from the room warmed her, and they had yet to gain entry into the vaulted chamber. While they waited for someone to seat them, they stood in awkward silence. Now they seemed to have nothing in common, although they chatted like long-lost friends at the office earlier. Soon the young woman escorted them to a table and placed menus in front of them. "Do you come here often?" "A couple of times a month, sometimes more." Melissa flipped through the food menu. "You'll have to guide me." "What do you like?" A boyish-looking in a girl t-shirt, emblazoned with the name of the pub, jeans and carpenter apron tied around her waist, appeared at the table. "Can I get you something to drink to start?" "Yes," Serenity asked for an espresso. "One bill, please," she told the waitress, then turned to her ninja partner. "This is on me." "But no arguments." Her companion ordered a coffee and smiled. "So what do you recommend?" "Well, the fajitas are to die for. So are the nachos. If you're not into Mexican, they do a delicious chicken burger with boneless, skinless breasts, strips of bacon, red onion, lettuce, and mayo. It's one of my favorites. You have a choice of sides." "Sold." A few minutes later, their drinks were placed on the table. "You ladies ready?" "Yes." She nodded to Melissa, indicating she would go first. After the waitress took her companion's order, Serenity ordered the poultry bun with sweet potato fries for herself. Over their beverages, they chatted. "Tell me a bit about yourself." I'm originally from Ottawa. Have 3 brothers and a sister." "Do you see them often?" "I wish. The closest is my brother, Roger. He lives in Quebec-City. Christopher is in Alberta. Michael's in England. Amy is in Sudbury. What about you?" "They're scattered to the 4 corners of the world almost. I have no one, no siblings, no parents. To be honest, I like it that way. If Melissa only knew the whole truth. Clothes from the Salvation Army, being razzed at school by other students because of her outdated apparel. Money was tight most of the time, but when Eric stole the meager amount left in the house, many days she went hungry. Her brother pulling up stakes when he did was the best thing that happened to the family." "Really? I find that hard to believe." Melissa savored her dark roast. "Probably times my mother wished she didn't have 5 of us, especially around Easter, Thanksgiving, and the festive season, and in the out-of-town cousins, and we had at least 10 kids running around." Serenity cringed at the thought. Holidays were never important to her. Time off work was about all they meant. Even then, she worked from home. When she was a young girl, her parents didn't go all gooey over Christmas and Santa Claus or Easter and the bunny. Valentine's Day didn't mean anything to them. Well, perhaps because it was the only day of the year they didn't fight. She picked up her mug and drank. The arrival of their food rescued her from having to answer any more of Melissa's questions, for now. I'm headed to Quebec-City in a couple of weeks after a visit to Montreal location first. My French is atrocious, so I saved that one for the end. I'll spend my fortnight there, then follow with the week of meetings which my employer and all the store managers will attend. You're busy. I suppose being that way keeps you from getting lonely. Are you going home for Christmas? No, not sure if I'll see any of my family this year. In the short time she spent with the Jonathan's employee, Serenity could tell the idea of not seeing any of her relatives made her sad. A financial thing? I'd gladly help you out if that's the case. Oh, no, not at all. If it were, I couldn't accept. If you change your mind, let me know. Their break ended and the woman returned to the store. As Melissa went about her afternoon routine, she couldn't stop thinking about Serenity. No family. No one to share time with over the holidays. There was more to her than she shared. Still, she didn't feel right about trying to pry the intimate lore from her. In the grand scheme of things, she wouldn't see her again anyway. She wouldn't accept an invitation either. The woman was too proud. Same with her. She couldn't take Serenity's offer of money to help her go see her mother and her siblings. Home was no longer the same now without her brothers and sisters. The last time they were all together as a family was at their father's funeral a year and a half ago. He succumbed to mesothelioma after years of exposure to asbestos. Before that, the unexpected death of her brother's wife.